Okay, so welcome to another live broadcast. This is a really special good one because one of the things that we do continually is sharpening the axe. So going and learning more, sharing ideas so that we can do a better job planning, and also just sharing some awesome life experience things with you as well. So our goal each year is to try to do 2 to 4 conferences per year and different ones. This year, first we did the T3, which is a technology conference, and then we also did the Morningstar Investment Conference, and then right now we are at the Financial Planning Association. So that is a thing that is near and dear to us, being a financial planning firm. And it's where we add the most value back. But half of the things that we learn and do are not necessarily just about planning. And I wanted to share with you 3 of the sessions that we thought were really important and applicable to people in general, not just in financial planning. So first we went to a behavioral session by Daniel Crosby. We were talking about how we as human beings function and have evolved over millions of years, but it's only in the last almost 100,000 that our frontal cortex has developed, and we think that we're these rational creatures, but really the majority of our brain and the amount of ideas that go through you are not in your conscious mind. And so he said, it's kind of funny, he's like, you just think about the 3 F's, feeding, fighting, and to make it PG, making love, right? So it's actually really interesting, and when we break it down, I don't know if you've ever had any interaction with behavioral heuristics and some of the things we do, but I think someone said now that we're up to like 150. That is complicated, right? But he said, there's really 4 main things: ego, emotion, conservation, and attention. And so ego, obviously, is all about us, our emotions, and how we feel, and how those auto responses save us a lot. Flight or flight, fight or flight, conservation. So our brains use up a ton of energy, and through most of our lifespan, we didn't have enough. So part of our brain is just pre-programmed to find the easiest way with the least amount of effort, right? How many times do we see this in lives? But I'm going to kind of skip ahead because I don't want everything to be too much, but one of the main things that it came down to is that we have to stop ourselves sometimes, and you have to put probability first, because our brains didn't evolve for this modern world that we have, doing math and investments and financial planning. We want to make the decisions, now that are our shortcuts because it's easier. And one of the things that he put up there for us to think about was base rates. And he's like, you gotta know what the base rate is. And what is a base rate? You can think about it, it's like, just what is the average, right? So he gave an example that he was coaching these younger guys that had graduated and started a firm, and their whole plan was predicated on the fact that they thought that they could bring over $100 million in 1 year from a startup firm. And he was like, well, what makes you think you can do that? And they had all these things, and he's like, well, let me just tell you how long it takes the average firm from startup to get to 100 million. It's 6 years. So we all think that we're better than the average or what so, but just having that base rate, and if you're making assumptions, basing it off of what the reality is and not just what our mental shortcuts have done, etc. The other analogy that he gave that I thought was great is a lot of times we all overestimate ourselves, and we have these great ideas, or we think we should do something based on a perception of knowledge, and really a lot of times that's wrong. And so one of the things that he said that you could talk to people if you're trying to help them is if you can explain it, to teach it to someone else. And the example that he gave, which I thought was great, is like, do you know how a toilet works? And almost everybody's like, yeah, explain it to me. Like, tell me actually how it works. Like, what's inside of it? How does it work? And most people cannot explain that to you. And that's just some simple subject like a toilet that everybody thinks that they know, right? So what about something more complicated? So really, if it is something that's really important, teach it to somebody else. See if you really know it. Or if you're trying to help mentor someone else, ask them to teach it to you to see if they really can. The next one we did, I could go on right up behaviorally, but I thought it was a very unique concept. A professor from UC Berkeley, Shachar Parikh, was talking about. In our profession, we do a lot of risk tolerance. If you had a financial planner, you're our client, you've taken the questionnaires for us, and we're trying to figure out risk versus reward. But a lot of the studying that he's doing now has to do with another side of things. Well, he says there's basically three: risk versus reward, which is the one that we're familiar with, now versus later, so immediate gratification versus deferred, and self versus others. And to me, that was the most interesting part of this, was that he actually made a formula to actually, through testing, be able to mathematically come out with what he calls fair-mindedness. Fair-mindedness means that you want a good world that you're willing to share some of yours versus as much as self-centered. So I'm going to hold the paper. You can see the formula right there from my notes. But it's kind of funny that you think that you could take something like that and turn it into a mathematical formula. And they're actually coming out with an application for firms like us to be able to use this testing and what we're doing to identify people that might like to do environmental, socially conscious, good governance, or we might want to use it for screening purposes or what so for employees or possibly even clients in the future if we do ever have an overabundance and the supply is bigger than the demand. But basically, that test measured two things: fair-mindedness, which I already explained to you, and equality over efficiency. And how he kind of made the analogy so people would understand it is you can't make everybody equal. So say socialism, splitting all the money up, that's gonna be inefficient in terms of the redistribution or whatever. And his analogy was if you put the good hat on people, then the Democrats or liberals are more about equality, and the Republicans and conservatives are more about efficiency. And so that really measures that. And so I just leave you with kind of what his findings pretty much pointed to in his research was that over the last, I think it was 10 years, people are becoming less fair-minded. So that probably has a lot to do with the income inequality and people feeling like they got to get theirs or they're going to get left out of the pie. But even what I think was even a little worse was when he looked at the elites of the lawyers from Ivy League schools and doctors and physicians, that they were considerably less fair-minded than the rest of society, which these are going to be the people that are going to be our leaders. It would be interesting to see what our legislators test out on average compared to the American people. So I think that's some really great research. And a lot of times we don't make these conscious decisions and just even know that we're trending towards being more selfish and not having a community or a country that wants to take care of each other. Is that how we want our kids to live? And once you know that, you can change. You can. So I think it's great work to do to be able to bring that to people's forefront. The last one I'm going to talk about, we had a really interesting presentation from Joe Davis. He is Vanguard's chief global economic or economist, and it wasn't a presentation that you would think from an economist to be dry and just about leading indicators to how close the recession is or what so. He actually had a question from his daughter about, is the world getting better? And he said he couldn't answer it. And so he took a team of people and they took a decent amount of money and a lot of time and studied for a half a year. And they basically found a way to quantify why and how has productivity changed over time. And so what he calls this is the idea multiplier. And so, from going through economic data, the patent filings, how many times different ideas got cited by different research or what so that they found the most important ideas and they figured out how many of them were going at any one time or point. And if you look at the productivity graph from 1980 until now, it's been steadily going down into where it almost bottomed out at 2008 or 9. But the idea multiplier that he has actually, when he back tested it back through history, had about a 5-year lead time. And for example, so back in 1980, I think it was 40 or 50 to 1. So one idea would spurn 50 others. And then up until the 2000s, we had gotten to like 100 to 1. And then it kind of flatlined out, till about last year. And this year it's gone up to like 400 to 1. So he attributes this to the fact that we're becoming more globalized. And his definition of globalization is the trading of knowledge across human civilization. And that by sharing ideas from people with different perspectives and diversity, it really spawns progress and innovation and creativity. And so he said that sometime in the next couple years, we should probably see almost an explosion of productivity, new things coming. So that's awesome, right? Because there's this perception, especially with the current administration and what's that things are going in the wrong direction. But the human race is progressing. The United States might have taken a step back, but the rest of the world, infant mortality's never been as low as it is. Lifespan's not as long as it's longer than it's ever been. More people have clean water. The median income continues to rise every year. So the world is getting better, and the short-term things are probably more than aberration. If you look back through history just in the United States, almost every time there's a new president, there's a certain amount of people that dislike it and think that the country's going in the wrong way. So really great. I think this study that they did is so new, I couldn't even find any examples to be able to post. I will see if I can email him and get him to email a couple of those graphs that he had up there so that we can share later and you can see them as well. But I really liked it, because a lot of economists and our market analysts and investment managers, most of them are very pessimistic. They call it the new normal. They think that economic and earnings growth from companies are going to be way lower because productivity has been down. New investment in companies has not been as high. The labor markets are very tight. And this is a very different perspective, which I kind of agree with. I believe in exponential growth of technology and that it's going to help humanity. So lastly, I'm going to leave you with this. Always sharpen your axe. Go do stuff in your professional associations, or even get involved with something that you just enjoy. We have multiple takeaways that we're taking from this conference to improve our practice and our service from our company to you. Three of the ones that I'll just mention on here that are going to impact you soon is we're implementing tax preparation for next year, but we're also, from this, talk to a company that we think will be great for actually tax planning into the future. They're called Tax Clarity by Covisum. So I think that that's going to be great. So when we put our tax software combined with that, we're going to be able to do awesome tax planning for our clients. We're going to start making client relationship timelines and add that into our portal for our clients so they can go back through our entire relationship and see when they did things and when they're supposed to do things, so they can get an awesome visualization of what's the value of our relationship, what did we do in the past, what do we do in the future, to just make things clear as we go forward. And then we will probably use that fair-minded questionnaire from True Profile is the name of that company. It's still in beta, but hopefully by the beginning of next year they'll have that out. And we have plans to use that to try to make our company better. One of our main things is to build a socially responsible company that's helping people to do better with their lives. And any tools that anybody can help us make will just be great. So again, thanks so much for joining into our live broadcast again. We look forward to continuing to give you good content as we go forward. Have a super duper weekend. Safe travels to anybody here at FPA that is traveling back home after the conference ends this afternoon. So have a good weekend. See you next week.